in March of 2018. So it was a little less than a year and a half ago. A young high school student, his name was Dylan Belcher, at John F. Kennedy High School in Cheektowaga, New York, was sitting in his English class, and he looked down on the floor, and there was a kind of a crumpled dollar bill, and he noted that. He thought about it, and he thought about picking it up, and maybe somebody needs it. You know, it might need it for bus fare, or maybe that's our lunch money or something. And so he left it there. And then he thought about it several times during the day again. And at the end of the day, he went back to his English class and looked, and it was still there on the floor. So he picked it up and kind of flattened it out a little bit, and he took it up and he gave it to his English teacher, Katie Madison. And he said, "I found this dollar on the floor." And she said, "Well, here's some tape. Go tape it up there over on the whiteboard in the corner." Kind of got a little lost and found thing going there, and whatever it was. So he put it up there, and it sat there for a couple of days. And people would come in and kind of look at it and go on their way. Came time later in the month, I think they had a little break for Easter, and before the Easter break, one brave boy got up and he finally went up to Katie Madison, and he said, "What's the deal with the dollar up there on the whiteboard?" And she said, "I don't know." And so they went on their break, and they came back, from Easter break, and there was a second dollar got put up there. Well, that really got people wondering then, and all the kids were talking. Now, Miss Madison was a veteran teacher, and she knew enough to know there was something cooking here, because she could tell the kids were talking, what are those $2 up there for? And there was all sorts of conjecture, and a lot of kids asked, "Say, why are those $2 up there?" And she gave the same answer every time, "I don't know." Well, the kids all finally decided, well, they must be saving for something big and something important. This must really be a big deal. And so there's a third dollar, and then a fourth dollar. And finally, one brave guy went up and really confronted Miss Madison, and he said, "What is that for?" Same answer, don't know. So he figured, whatever this has taken us, we're going to get there faster if we have more money. And a 20 went up on the board. A few days later, a 10 went up on the board. A couple days later, a string of coins went up on the board. And it continued to do this. It went all the way through April with more and more money going up on the board. It got close to the 1st of May, and Katie Madison didn't know exactly what to do with this money that was on the board. So she asked her class, she said, "My brother-in-law, he passed away. He died of ALS. Lou Gehrig's disease. And every year I make a donation to ALS research to find a cure for ALS. Would you guys be okay if we made a donation in your name to ALS research?" And unanimously said yes. But even more than that, in the next week, the balance went from $175.76 to $321.06. And that was on the last week. And so she went up to the board the last of May, or the last of April, so she could send it in May, ALS Awareness Month. And she took it all down, and she sent in $321.06. That was on a Saturday. By Monday at noon, there were 8 more $1 bills on the whiteboard. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for coming out here today. Beautiful Alaskan day. We're moving into autumn, and thank you very much for coming out. Thank you to those of you watching on YouTube. We hope that if you're ever in our area, someday you'll stop by and join one of our services. We promise you that we'll do our best to make you feel right at home. So thank you all, and welcome and thank you for coming. 3 major points today. I'm going to talk about God is our source. Then I'm going to talk about the law of circulation, and then I have an invitation for you today. So very often, we tend to think that our job or that annuity or our pension or Social Security or whatever it is our source, when really those are just resources. Our source always was and always will be God. God is our source. There is a story in the Hebrew Scriptures, a lady by the name of Ruth, and she lived with her mother-in-law, and they were struggling. They had virtually no money, and they were starving. And so Ruth would go out into the fields after the laborers had worked to harvest and get all of the grain, and she would pick up the grain that they missed. The owner of the land, the wealthy landowner, noticed this. His name was Boaz. We've got our Boaz. Well, this was ancient Boaz. And he ordered his laborers, leave a little extra. I want you to leave a little more grain, which they did. And that allowed Ruth to survive. It allowed her to live, not only have enough that they could eat and to live on, but they were able to sell a little bit and move. These stories, the biblical stories, sometimes I get chided for telling these stories, but they're powerful meanings. There is so much in there. So what is this story about? What does it mean? Does it mean that Boaz is a good guy? Yeah, he probably is. Does it mean the laborers missed some grain? Yeah, probably so. The meaning of this story to me is that the laborers aren't the source of Ruth's good. Boaz isn't the source for Ruth and her mother-in-law. God is the source. Boaz and the laborers are just the resources. That's how the divine is getting that good to Ruth. And it's the same with us. We can look beyond the resource to the real source, which is the divine. A little more current example. We have a congregant, a man that attends our center here. I respect him very, very much. He is a man that walks his talk. He absolutely practices these principles. Well, he lost his job. In the face of all that's going on now and everything, he lost his job. And I think he sat on his pity pot for about 2 days, but then he got right off of it, and he went to that place where he recognized that his source was not that job. His source was something greater than that, and he opened himself up to a different avenue, a different way of being. It was no longer, oh, feel sorry for me, it wasn't fair, it isn't right, to I am open to a new expression. And within a short amount of time, we're talking like a week, he not only got 1 new job, he got 2 new jobs. He got 2 part-time jobs that paid more than the original job he had, plus it's allowing him to have enough time to do some of the deferred maintenance projects around his house. Lord knows what those are. I've got a few. And he was able to do all of that into. So his good actually expanded by something that was originally looked at as being a negative. Because he recognized that God is his source, and he opened up to more than that. And sometimes I think, these sermons, we could just cut a lot of time out here. We could just have Aaron and Jessica do some music. Thank you, guys. It was awesome. You guys are doing a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you, Jessica and Aaron. We could have a little bit of music and have a sacred reading and call it good and get home in time for the kickoff. But wow, today's reading. It is common to think that our supply is something that comes to us instead of something from us. When we outwardly manifest prosperity, the supplier is the invisible substance of spirit within us. The human tendency is to connect the big salary, the annual bonus, inheritance, or what other the appearance of prosperity to something or someone other than God. And that's our tendency. We tend to look at this as something other than God. So, God is indeed our source. And how does all this work? It works through a thing that Ernest Holmes called the law of circulation. And what exactly is the law of circulation? Simply stated, it is what we put forth into the universe comes back to us. It's a boomerang effect. What we put out comes back to us. And we are taught this in scriptures going all the way back. We look at the Christian Gospels. In Matthew, we are taught, freely ye have received, freely give. Ernest Holmes taught us, it is only as we allow the divine current to flow through us, on and out, that we really express life. Paul Samuelson was an author of economics textbooks. If any of you took economics, you undoubtedly studied a Paul Samuelson textbook. His texts were used for over 50 years in colleges and high schools throughout the United States. He taught that a unit of currency will circulate 7 times within an economic system. That currency will circulate 7 times. You earn money, whatever it is that you do, you come into money, however it is, as your source. You spend it at the grocer pays his employees with it. They buy it, they buy gas. In turn, they pay rent. The rent has the mortgage company, the bank. It all circulates around and around 7 times. So what blocks our participation in the law of circulation? Why isn't everybody wealthy all the time? If we live in an abundant universe, why aren't we all wealthy all the time? I've been doing this a while now, and I've come to the conclusion there are 2 major blocks to everyone living in this life of prosperity and abundance. The first, and it's the smaller of the 2 big ones, is a belief in lack and limitation. It's a belief that there's only so much. There is a finite amount of whatever it is, and I better get in there and get it while the getting's good. That there is a finite amount of money, and I better get my share. And if I have to elbow you out of the way, so be it. It's a belief in lack and limitation. What's the old saying? Everything comes to he who hustles while he waits. Yes, we have to work for it. Yes, we have to do. We have to give the universe an opportunity to provide for us. We can't just sit and do nothing. But we don't have to take it away from somebody in order to have it. There is an infinite amount of good in this world. The second thing, and it's a larger thing, and this is my experience, is a belief that we're not worthy. There is a hidden belief that we're not worthy of things that are good. I'm not smart enough. I'm not blank enough. I'm not, that we're really not worthy of that which is good. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because each and every one of us are magnificent children of God. And as such, we are perfect. Yes, we make mistakes. That's part of being what human is. But we are worthy of all that God has to give us. In Living the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes wrote, Jesus announced the principle of substance and supply, or the law of opulence. He clearly taught that it is right for us to have what we want, provided that we subject our desires to the divine will and the divine necessity. Think about that. You can have anything you want, and it's your right to have it, as long as it complies with the divine will and the divine necessity. Well, what is the divine will and the divine necessity? The divine will are all of those qualities of God: beauty, truth, wisdom, harmony, peace, beauty. All of those are the qualities of God. That is the divine will. The divine will is expressing as all of those qualities. And we have a right to all of those: peace, joy, happiness, abundance, prosperity. It's our birthright. So then what is divine necessity? That's very simple. Divine necessity, we express it in terms of our teaching symbol, but it's the very concept that there is a substance, a part of the divine that responds to us. It responds to our thoughts, and it creates the world that we're in. It operates all the time for everybody. That's why people that we think of as real scoundrels and not good people are sometimes very, very wealthy. They have all the things because they're in alignment with that. God doesn't care. God doesn't judge. It just responds. It just replies. They're open to that divine necessity. How many people were here last week? Okay, quite a few people were here last week. Well, Camille, bless her heart, she did a wonderful job. And I had asked her to be aware of the time, because sometimes Camille can go over just a little bit. And to be aware, because we have Sunday school teachers in there, and they have a lesson plan that takes them up until noon. And I don't know if you've ever had the joy of being in with, what did we have last week? 24, 26 little ones, and you're out of material, and somebody's over there, the talking head going on and on. So I told her to be really aware of the time factor. Well, she told this great story about the dentist. And she went to the dentist and the fear that she went in and the shame and everything. She did a great job with it. And she left us hanging. What happened? So I'm here today in a Paul Harvey moment. Does anybody remember? Who remembers Paul Harvey? Oh, look at a bunch of you know Paul Harvey. The rest of the story. So what happened is that the next week, Camille opened her newspaper and looked down, and the governor had changed his mind how he was going to handle it, and they were going to leave the dental portion of it for adults open for another 30 days. So she read that. She ran over, grabbed her phone, dialed the phone. It rings. Hi, this is Camille. Happened to be the bookkeeper that answered the phone. She said, we've already submitted the paperwork. You're clear. You don't have to worry about it. And so she was already taken care of. But she had that firm belief that she was worthy of it, that she was accepting of it, that she accepted her good. In this case, it came from a change in the plan. But I assure you, Camille got her teeth cleaned, and it was all taken care of and paid for. Ooh, I'm behind. So thirdly, I have an invitation for you today. And I invite all of you to step into the law of circulation. Now, as many of you know, Ann and I are going to be leaving. We leave soon for Europe, and we are going to once again walk the Camino de Santiago. The whole story on that, I will be sending some updates. I don't know who to send them to. I'll send them to somebody, and you can get updates on where we are. While we're gone, Reverend Linda will be here, but Brother Kaleem has very graciously offered to conduct a pledge campaign while we're gone. We haven't had one for several years. They are things of necessity, and yet sometimes they're not the most popular things, is when we have the pledge campaign. A lot of people within our movement are here because they have been offended or wounded by other religions and other spiritual experiences, and one of the things that they hate the most is, give me money, give me money, give me money. And that's not what we're about at all. But what we are about is in knowing the law of circulation and knowing that it works and giving people an opportunity to participate in that. So Brother Kaleem is going to be doing a campaign in the fall, and I don't know where I'm at in here. What the theme of this is and what we're doing is, yes, we are asking for your financial support. Not because we have a light bill and a N-Star bill or anything else. We're asking for your financial support because what we do makes a difference in the world. What we do in terms of teaching spiritual transformation makes people's lives better. People that attend the classes benefit from these classes. They are able to look at the world through a different set of lenses. They can look at the world in a different way, and they can step into the world with a totally different attitude. Now, it'd be a lot cheaper if we were to hold classes at Starbucks or at, we could get an ASD classroom for a fraction of the price that we pay for here. But we keep this here because the work that's involved in some of this can be deep spiritual work. And when you have the opportunity to look at your life and see how it got to be the way it is, maybe you don't want to do that at Starbucks. Maybe you don't want to do that in front of a bunch of strangers. And what we do here is we create a sacred, safe place for you to step into and participate in that spiritual transformation. And so we are asking you to help us in accomplishing our mission statement. Our mission statement is, we teach spiritual transformation with grace and joy. So I invite you to support us in that mission. We gathered, whatever it was, 4 years ago, and we came up with that, and it mirrored the mission statement we had before. What we're here to do is teach spiritual transformation. It doesn't mean that we don't do other things, but we support people whose mission is to do those things. And I'm going to give an example, and that is FISH, Fellowship in Serving Humanity. They provide food to the hungry. Awesome group. Small group, and they do so much with so few people, and they really help people that are in that place in between where they've fallen in the cracks. They're not yet eligible for food bank, and yet they still have empty stomachs. They are able to help people. That's their mission. We help them with that, and that reminds me, there's a lot of things I didn't get done before we're getting out of town, so Cynthia's holding the presents. She can't say anything, so I'm asking her to help me with this because FISH came to us and asked us to help them with powdered milk and canned fruit. So if you'll think of that, next week we'll, Cynthia, have some bins, and we can start collecting, and at the end of the month we'll have a donation to Fish. They admire our generosity so very, very much. And they do a great job because that's their mission. Now I'm asking you to also support us in our mission. We change lives. I'm going to have another quick story from the Hebrew Scriptures. This comes from the second book of Kings. It doesn't say her name, it just says a certain woman approached the prophet Elisha, and she said to him, my husband died. He was one of your servants. He was a man of God, and he has died, and I have no funds. I have nothing, and the bondsman has come to me and is going to take my sons and put them in slavery as payment for my bond. And can you help me? And Elisha said, well, how am I supposed to help you? And she said, I don't know. How can you help? He thought for a minute, and he says, what do you have in your house? And she says, nothing. We have nothing. He says, surely you must have something. And she said, well, I've got one little vessel with a little bit of oil in it. And he said, that's enough. He said, I want you to go out and start gathering vessels. Get every container you can get. Beg, borrow, steal, whatever it is. I didn't say steal. Go out and get every vessel that you can get. For what am I going to do? Just do what you're told. So she went out and she had her sons, and they gathered pots and urns and all sorts of things. They got them all. And she says, okay, we've got a whole bunch of them. He says, okay, now take that little bit of oil and start pouring it in. She says, well, I'm going to fill in the first one. He says, just do it. Do what you're told. And so she poured it in. Well, fill the whole jar. So she took the second jar, she filled it. She started filling these jars from that little bit of jar. This is sort of a takeoff on the whole Hanukkah story where that lasted the 8 days. Only this filled all of the jars with this great oil. She was able to sell this oil. She was able to pay off her debt so that they didn't come and take away her sons, and she gave her enough to live a little bit. And what's our message in this? Who's the source? God is our source. God is the source of a certain woman. And when we open ourselves up to the divine current and allow it to flow through us on and out, wonderful things can happen. Promotions come. Lucky breaks happen. Real estate sold at just the right time. Real estate's bought at just the right time. Things happen for us when we step into that. And so with that in mind, we are going to do something. We're going to let everybody participate in kind of a different way. You know, this is a wonderful congregation. We are the envy of centers all over the lower 48. I am looked at as the luckiest minister in the movement because you are such a wonderful, giving, generous congregation. Now, you notice over here that we have, who's this? Is
Judy.
This is Judy Juber. Our children in the last 2 weeks have been decorating jars. And they're putting a sticker on it and it says, be the change you want to see in the world.
Oh, yes.
And so what we're asking is if you could get one of the jars, the kids are going to come out when they come out, as soon as I shut up and sit down, and you can put your change in it every week, and we'll have a bigger container up here, and we will collect your loose change, and it's going to be like the dollars, and we'll see how much we can come up with. And it's not about the actual dollars, but it's about everyone stepping into that law of circulation. Trust me, when you step in and you see this TSRW, this stuff really works. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Okay. You probably wondered why I started with that story of the multiplying dollars on the board. And the reason that I started with that story is to lay the foundation and the groundwork to be aware of how generous we all are. It is my firm conviction that human beings are generous by nature. It is our nature to give. It's what we do. It's who we are. We tend to give. And I'm asking you to step into that givingness. The final takeaway, as we come together as a community, we make a difference in the world. Please join me in financially supporting our center. And so with that in mind, I just simply recognize that there is indeed a power in the universe. One magnificent, innocent, infinite power. A power that knows all of everything. A power that is far greater than we are. And that power is within each and every one of us at every moment. And I know that as we go through life and we face the challenges that life brings to us, that infinite presence can guide us through any situation. Instead of I am ill, we can proclaim I am healthy today. Instead of I don't have, we can proclaim I have all that I need and more. But most importantly of all, we can recognize that we are beings of love. And as we live and move and interact with one another, all of our interactions are governed by the very love of God. And we let all of the other things, the appearances of illness, the appearances of lack and limitation, the appearances of separation from one another and separation from God, all fall away, and we recognize that the love of God is greater than all. And so we just give thanks. We give thanks for that awareness. And now we can step back and allow that power, that presence to guide us to prosperity, to health, and to love. We let it go, we let it be, and so it is.
So it is.